moment of silence for first responders and veterans. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Lori.
Haskell,
Here.
Copeland,
Here.
Fitzpatrick,
You'll be here just a couple minutes later.
Strauss,
Here.
Majeski,
Here.
Pittsburgh.
Here. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda with the additional items?
I'll make that motion. I'll support it.
Motion made by Dale, seconded by Leonard. Any discussion?
I do just one thing. I have, I've laid on your desk the attachment C. It's a corrected attachment C for the, it's the health insurance sheet for the extensions that are at the end of the packet. Page, right there. You got your hand. Yep, that sheet, that one.
Can I have roll call, Lori?
Sure. Majeski?
Yep.
Strauss?
Yes.
Copeland,
Yeah.
Haskell,
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Here.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the Board of Commissioner minutes from August 19th?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Leonard, seconded by Dale. Any discussion? Roll call.
Strauss,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Haskell,
Yes.
Copeland,
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Yes. And I have a motion for the special board meeting minutes for September 9th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Leonard, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? Lori?
Okay, Strauss,
Yes.
Haskell,
Yes.
Majeski.
Yep.
Copeland
Yes.
and Pittsburgh.
Yes. General public comment.
I was signed up to speak, is that okay? I'll be brief. It came to my attention a while back that county lost its person who was managing your software for the buildings to manage the heating and cooling system. I believe that that is correct.
Our maintenance person, which was Dave.
Dave.
I have a background in heating and cooling, and I'm familiar with that software. We have it at the township. As most of you know or should know, I'm leaving the township. I would be interested in taking that over, depending on what the board decides to do with that position. The system obviously needs somebody at the controls watching it. It was designed for that purpose. I'm well familiar with it, and I'm well familiar with the company that did the software, and I worked with them. So I just wanted to throw my name in the hat that if that position is going to open up, I would like to be considered for it. And with that, I think I'm going to leave the room and give you a little bit of cushion here in case one other person needs to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yep.
Do you have anything, Jesse?
I don't see any other, nobody raising their hands or anything like that, so.
Okay.
How big a group we got out there today? This is 25 people. I'm good, I'm good.
We have nothing on the communication
Gary.
list?
Yep, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
See you, Jerry.
Over to you, Tracy.
I just have a few things because I've been working on most of the budget stuff and working on the health insurance, but I received a report from Melissa yesterday as it relates to the gypsy moth. She provided me just 2 stat sheets for Hayes Township and for Lincoln, and it's kind of all over the board in some aspects, but I'll pass these around so you can take a look at them. It shows the, and I'll get you a copy. It shows the per acre count for 2019 and then the per acre count for 2020. So if you want to take a look at those, I'll pass those around. I had sent you an email as it relates to the EEE, and I kind of wanted to go over that a little bit. We were informed by the health department that there were 5 cases in Clare County, and therefore the state of Michigan was declaring a state of emergency and going to, they were having a press release on Tuesday, and then from what I understand today, they will be spraying. In the past, there have been, you've been able to opt out. There is no opt out in this case. They are just going to spray, and it'll be in those 5 different areas. I sent you a copy of the map, tried to print that out, but it's quite large. So, and I also sent you a copy of the frequently asked questions as it relates to the EEE, and if anybody else needs those, or I can get copies for anyone, let me know and I can get that to you. And then the last thing, Lori Phelps and I were on the phone with CDBG relating to a $181,000 grant that is available to Clare County relating to COVID. Although we have to have a public hearing on September 30th, and I was going to request that the board meet on September 30th, even if it's just for an hour, to allow us to get the budget adjustments completed for the end of the year and to have that public hearing for that grant. So with that said, that's all I have.
So 30th is 2 Wednesdays, 2 weeks from today. Anybody have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem at all.
I'll be here.
9 o'clock?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we will schedule the meeting for September 30th.
Okay.
Public hearing and any budget adjustments or anything else that we must do.
Perfect, thank you.
Is that it, Tracy?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have a report from Lori? Did she give you anything, or is she out there?
Your packet.
I know she's been out sick, so.
Okay.
That means, yeah.
Okay. We don't have the bond council in here.
He will be on Zoom.
Is he out there either? And do we want
Is Eric on?
Good morning.
Hi, Eric.
Hello.
So if you want to go ahead and if you're ready, are you ready now?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. All right. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Well, good morning to the board. Thank you for having me here this morning. The resolution before you is a bond resolution that seeks to authorize issuance of limited tax general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $545,000. The proceeds of which would be used to acquire a senior services council facility and complete the needed renovations. The bonds are proposed to be sold to rural development through its bond purchase program, and it offers extremely low interest rates. The interest rate that would be set by this bond resolution would be 2.25%. And just this morning, I've heard that rate will be going down to 2.125% on October 1st. So the bond resolution sets the interest rate at 2.25% or the lower rate in effect at the time of closing. So the county would get the benefit of that if it closes after October 1st, and that is likely on the current timeline. The other important thing that the bond resolution does is it pledges the county's limited tax full faith and credit to the repayment of the principal and interest on the bonds. And that means that each year the county has to include in its budget amounts necessary to pay the principal and interest on the bonds. However, the county is not authorized to raise taxes to pay the debt service on the bonds. That's why it's a limited tax general obligation bond. You just have to pay it out of the available county funds each year. The final thing that the resolution does that's very important is that it authorizes the county administrator as the authorized officer to take all the actions needed and sign all the
Mark Andrews is? Is he Zoom bombing?
He's been removed from the meeting.
Sorry, later. He's done with his presentation, he said Eric did.
David said a question?
I thought you said something too.
No, I said I would move them, and Jesse said, should I move them?
Do we have any? Nothing you would like to say? Nothing? Okay, Leonard, could you make that motion?
Motion to adopt resolution number 20-22, allowing the issuance of bonds in the amount of $545,000 to be issued and sold for the purpose of defraying a portion of the cost of the project for an additional senior center.
Second,
I'll second it.
motion made by Leonard, seconded by David. Any other discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Strauss,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Majewski,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Pittsford.
Yes. Okay. Motion and the resolution has passed. Thank you for coming and giving us your presentation.
Thank you very much for your time. Any questions, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We know Judge Farrell coming as well.
He was coming via Zoom.
See you out there. Judge Farrell on.
I don't see him on the list now.
He's not due to be on until 9:30, so
We can, I guess we'll go into the Justice Committee and start going through the motions there.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Dale, you want to take number one?
Sure. To approve the indigent defense contractor agreement with Karen Moore for October 1st through September 30th of 2022.
Second?
I'll support it.
Okay, motion made by Dale, second by Leonard. Any discussion? This pretty much the same as what we've done in the past, Tracy?
yes, this is the contractual agreement with Karen to run the indigent defense program.
Okay, so everything is pretty much staying the same?
Yes, it is.
No changes? Okay.
Is she commissioner of that? Somebody said nothing in the last meeting that she was commissioner over there.
She will be after the first of the year depending on who runs, if anybody runs against her in November or.
But she did run for.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Majewski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yeah.
Pascal,
Yeah.
Hoagland,
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pittsford.
Yes. Okay, motion carried. Jeff, will you take number two?
Motion to accept the $57,018.70 Michigan State Police Grant Award for the Clare County Courts and allow the vice chair to sign.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Dale. Any discussion? Obviously, it's wonderful that we ended up getting it. I know they'll put it to good use. Anybody have anything else? Roll call, Lori?
Pascal,
Yes.
Majewski,
Yes.
Hoagland.
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Pittsford.
Motion carried. Okay, we'll move down to physical resources. Mark, you want to take number one?
To approve the agreement for MSU Extension Services for a period of 1 year beginning October 1st, 2020.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by David. Any discussion?
Does this, so we're gonna fund MSU extension, I guess, in this budget, upcoming budget year then?
Well, it's for
Or
the,
just-
it's the millage money.
This is just
It's just the millage.
That's just, yes.
Hi, this is Sherry Spolman. I'm here if you have any questions.
You have a question, Sherry?
Mm-mm.
No? Roll call, Lori?
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Majewski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Yes. Motion carried. I'd like to say thanks to the voters for putting that millage through so we can continue that service. Without that, that would have not been an option. David, can you take number 1 under finance and administration?
Of course. Motion to approve statutory finance committee meeting minutes of August 24th, 2020 in the amount of $27,397.44. September 8th, 2020 in the amount of $113,919.19.
A second?
That's okay.
Motion made by David, second by Dale. Any discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Hoagland,
Yes.
Majewski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Yes. Motion carried. Leonard, will you take number 2?
Monthly expenditures, motion. To approve the expenditures for the month of August 2020 in the amount of $1,881,629.25. The general fund expenditures total $787,021.79.
A second?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Leonard, second by Mark. Any discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Strauss,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Majewski,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Motion carried. Okay. Dale, number 3, we have to pick a couple people. I don't have my, I never got my original packet, so we have to. My bad.
Just gonna make a suggestion. Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I don't know, we're picking up person and an alternate. Are these commissioners? If we're gonna be commissioner, I would just make a suggestion or a recommendation. If we have a commissioner who's gonna be on, like myself, I'm not gonna be running, I'm not gonna be here, so I don't think I should be a candidate for it.
Dale?
Just an idea.
Tracy, you normally go, correct?
Mhm. They're doing everything virtual, so. I'll probably be attending the thing, but this is just for the voting part of it. So,
So we do Tracy as the delegate and then you have an alternate.
No, the alternate,
Dale?
Jeff, you want to be the alternate?
I'm not really gonna be able to participate. You can put my name on there if I don't have to, but.
that's, you'd be the voting member if I'm not able to do it.
All right, I'll do it.
Okay.
Way to take one for the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to elect Tracy Byard as the member delegate for the MERS virtual annual conference to be held September 21st to the 24th, 2020, and Jeff Haskell as the alternate.
Have a second?
I'll support it.
Motion made by Dale, second by Leonard. Anybody have any other discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Majewski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Yes. Motion carried. Jeff, you take number 4?
Motion to accept the Help America Vote Act CARES Act grant agreement with the county clerk acting as the grant administrator and signing said grant in the amount of $17,675. Participating Clare County townships will be responsible for the matching portion of this grant, and Clare County will be responsible for no portion of this grant.
Should say will not, sorry, will not be responsible. Clare County will not.
Oh,
Will not be responsible. responsible for
Clark County
no
will not
portion.
be.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was right. Our county's not paying any portion of it.
Do I have a
For no
second?
portion, it says, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Jeff, seconded by David. Discussion.
So how much is each township gonna be liable for?
I don't have an amount. It depends on the number of townships that are participating. It keeps changing because townships keep dropping out, so. But the townships that are participating are aware of it and know the amount, the changing amounts.
So what's the money go to? Are you gonna purchase equipment or something?
Yes. A high-speed tabulator.
How many do you have that want to participate in now?
Right now, 3. I'm also seeking a grant. I've applied for another grant to actually pay that other half, so that hopefully townships won't have to pay it. I'll know whether I receive that grant in another week, I believe. So hopefully the townships won't have to pay anything. But they're prepared to pay their share if they need to.
Anybody have any other questions? Roll call, Lord?
Pascal,
Yes.
Copeland,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yeah.
Majeski,
Yes.
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Motion carried. Mark, can you take number 5, please?
To approve the budget adjustment number 20-167, the amount of $12,500 and allow for the payment to the Middle Michigan Development Corporation with the funds to come from remaining CDBG funds.
Second.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mark, second by Jeff. Discussion.
I have a question. Is this to put them back in the budget for 2020?
There would be, the funds would come from the CDBG money for 2020 as well, or for 2021 as well.
Okay, because I have a couple of board packets, meeting minutes here. And they state that we were not gonna put them back in if they didn't give us the grant that they were working on. They didn't get the grant that they were working on. So as a board and them, we both agreed that we would not put them in under no circumstances unless they got the grant.
This is not general fund money.
I
This is
know,
coming from the CDBG money.
I understand that. I am not disputing that.
There's a little backstory behind that.
I just wanted to know why
Or
we're
the fact
changing our mind.
that
Okay, that's all I want to know. Why are we changing our mind?
we ordered the computers before the grant was put in or approved. So by doing that, they could not get that. So there's some alternate, or a little bit of different circumstances along with that.
But who paid for the computers? We did.
But you gotta remember the timeline that the computers, had they not been ordered, they did get the grant. The grant was approved, but because we ordered the computers ahead of time, we didn't get the money because it had to be ordered after the grant was approved. So there was a timing issue. So they did come up with the grant, but it was basically, like crossing on dates. If we would have held off on ordering the computers, they would have been paid for by the grant.
So they got the grant, but we were told for a year and a half that they didn't get the grant.
No, they
Because
got the grant.
when we
but it
were
was
sitting in
not
this
the
boardroom all year, we were never told that they were given the grant. They were told
Right, because we
that we
couldn't
never
have the
got
money.
it.
Because we couldn't have the money, that's why
Right.
it was basically as if they didn't get the grant, because we couldn't get the money, because we ordered the computers before the grant was issued.
So then why are we paying them? I'm just curious. I understand that it's not our money that we're giving them, but I just want to know why the board is going back on its decision.
I believe Lori Phelps is the one that said that she would pay for it. That's through the community development.
If she could come up with a way to fund it, so it wasn't coming out of the general fund.
And they are
this is
still
it.
doing work for us. They,
I understand that they're
this,
doing work for
I had
us.
talked about, and this is totally at the discretion of the board, and when we were talking about the budget, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, but they had talked about the windmills at the south end of the county, which will bring in quite a bit of tax money, they're working on that project. They've been talking with me and put me in touch with the gentleman for the solar panels for the county building and the sheriff's department, which the Building and Grounds Committee will be talking about. So they have been working on several things, and they also did get a grant for funding tablets for the senior services department.
It's all well good. I'm sure they're doing great work for the community. Okay, as for the stuff south of in the south end of the county, you know, I'm understanding that we are not the only organization that gives them money or gave them money to do work in the county. Okay, my whole stickler on this whole thing is we said we were not going to pay them. We went and told the entire community, look, once we make a decision, it's final, and then we're walking back. I'm just on that principle. I'm going to vote no. But you guys vote
We
your
said we
conscience.
would, we said we wouldn't take it out of our budget. But Lori Phelps has stepped up. She has the money. She sees the value in the program, and she's willing to put the money out of the community development fund to finance it for the year. So she sees the value there, and she has the right to spend that money that way. It's just not coming out of general fund.
I understand.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Roll call, Lori?
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Hoagland,
No.
Strauss,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Yes. Motion carried. Is Judge Farrell on yet, Jesse?
He is, and we also have Jenny Beamer put her hand up. I'm not sure if she's got a comment.
Go ahead.
It was just a question, but it's okay. I was just wondering the timing of the CDBG monies. Is that in the last packet you sent, Tracy?
You mean the budget adjustment and stuff?
You have the budget adjustment for the CDBG monies to come in so that you can do payout MMDC.
Right.
So you're saying it's contingent on the grant. Is the grant in probably that second one I didn't print? I was just looking for the timing of it. So obviously, you know, the fiscal year ends here, and then there's a 60-day accrual period. So I wasn't quite sure the timing of it all.
I guess I'm confused.
I might be too. Did you say you had a grant that was going to cover that?
No.
No, I said that MMDC had received a grant for iPads for the senior.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Okay, I misunderstood that part. Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Judge Farrell, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, Jody.
So I appreciate the board taking this back up after last week. I know a couple of the board members were absent, so Ms. Bitchford, Mr. Majewski, thank you for hearing me out this morning. I told the board I was hopeful I could call in. I'm out in Utah right now, so hopefully everything comes through okay. But I guess real short, I had presented to the board last week a proposal on three components. One, I think, has already been taken care of. I was seeking this board's approval of a resolution on 2 retirees from our department. One that has provided over 25 years of service to Clare County and the courts. The other over 49 years. Most of the board members had signed that resolution already, and I appreciate their support. I was simply asking for the other 2 board members, if they would join, we would appreciate that, and join with the county in thanking them for their service to the courts and to our community. The second component that I wanted to address, we have one of our magistrates came down ill yesterday. Mr. Warpel is handling 2 county matters today, so he's unable to be physically present. But I wanted to hit on this. I believe it's on your agenda, is for seeking approval from this board of a Michigan State Police grant that we had put in for to assist the courts with the coronavirus issues that the courts are facing. This grant, with the hard work of Mr. Warpel and Mr. Schlaze, is a grant for all 3 courts in Clare County under the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding. This is a reimbursement-only grant. I believe the letter from the state police was provided to Mr. Kleinhardt. The letter dated September 10th. The grant for the courts is $57,018. Deadline for signing of the contract, I believe, is November 30th. We hope to do that much sooner than that. This is a great opportunity to help reduce risk to the community and to our employees as this coronavirus situation continues to expand. So we're asking for the board's approval of that reimbursement grant. And then lastly, as I had presented to the board last week, one of the 2 employees that are retiring from the district court has some unusual circumstances based on years of service, age, and the complexity of the insurance, I guess, buyout, if you will, that was offered by the board. I think it came in 3 parts. I think Mr. Strauss, Mr. Haskell, Mr. Heffling, Mr. Fitzpatrick each had some questions. And there's a bit of confusion between the departments in the county and the courts as to union and non-union and the sheriff's department contracts as to how to treat these things. I believe Ms. Byard and I had both agreed that the vacation buyout, so to speak, is all taken care of with county administration. So I don't think that's an issue. The first issue that had come up of the 3 components was the sick time buyout. There were a number of conflicting policies out there between departments about what an individual would receive. My particular employee, I believe if it were a 50% buyout, I think there were well over 600 hours accumulated over the 49 or so years. Comes to approximately $8,080. So we're asking for the board's approval of that payout for that. I think it's fairly consistent, except with regards to the sheriff's department, but it's very consistent with the union employees in the county, the non-union court employees, and I think Mr. Schlaze chimed in on that last week as well. And give or take, I think it's just over $8,000, $8,080, give or take. I can get the exact number for Ms. Byard. Second component of that was that in treating this employee with a union fringe benefits pursuant to the contract negotiations from last year, if this board adopts the same fringe benefit payout as that of a union employee, we are asking the board to consider then that this particular employee did not receive the 5% increase last October 1st. So if that were paid over 26 pay periods, it comes to approximately $1,265. And again, that's rough. But I found it difficult to say, well, you get this benefit and be treated as a union employee, but not the others. It makes it very consistent. So that would be the $1,265. And then finally, this last request is very unique due to, and I don't want to dwell on age and things of that nature, but when the board presented the 2-year insurance information to employees, this particular employee, because of the Medicare requirements, I guess the quote, same policy, when it was presented by the board that you'd be entitled to the same policy, same coverage. It's not a possibility as I understand it in talking with Ms. Byard. So unfortunately, this particular employee would have an increase in premiums personally of about $150 per month for that 2-year period. So we were asking, due to the large commitment over 49 years, that this board consider an approval of the 150 times the 24 so that it basically maintains similar cost. We're not asking the board to pay for the cost share increases that each employee would have, but rather if she stayed, she would not have this cost. If she left, she does have this cost. That comes to approximately $3,600. Total payout to be just over $12,900 for those services. And I guess for Ms. Pitchford and Mr. Majewski, I think it was Mr. Heffling and a couple of the others that originally stated that while the board could have taken this action last week, that because of the absence of the two, they felt it more appropriate to have input from the others. I know Mr. Kleinhardt initially showed some approval, but I see that he's is absent today. So we are asking the court to consider those 3 approvals.
Everybody think?
Well, several of these items, I think, still comes back to clarity with policy and procedure. The one issue regarding the insurance and the added cost of $140 a month. I kind of looked at that and I studied a little bit. I will go back to a statement that I made early on when we started this, is that anybody considering this really should run the math and make sure they're very comfortable with the situation. I commend her for the 40-some years of service, but whatever combination of things work out that it ends up costing her that, I haven't been able to come up with a way or a reason that this board caused that situation, that hardship. So it's just, unfortunately, it's the way the math worked out. That was not in the original proposal to any of the employees. So I think on that subject, my opinion is we need to stick to our original policy, and if the math works out that she loses she has to pay the extra 140, it's kind of a buyer beware. I mean, I made the comments early on months ago to tell everybody, if you're considering this, make sure you run the math on everything. And my feeling would be different is if I felt that this board did something that caused that financial hardship, and I don't see, unless somebody can come up with something, I don't think we created that financial hardship.
I think I can address that, Mr. Fitzpatrick, was that the problem was twofold. One, I do recall you saying that. The other is it works for and against the county, and that's why I'm asking this board to consider it, because when the board made the offer, there were several meetings postponed to take this under advisement so that the board could consult with their advisors, attorneys, because as the board may recall, it had presented this offer, and that's the problem. It works both ways. When the board makes an offer that says we will provide the level of care, the level of coverage, and unfortunately, once that offer is accepted, in my opinion, that forms a contractual obligation. And you're right, it does work for and against the employee, but it also works for and against the board. If the board makes an offer that says, we're gonna pay $1,000 to any employee that steps away, and 100 employees step away, and then you say, whoa, we didn't expect to have a $100,000 obligation. Well, if those 100 employees accepted that offer, that's where I see it, as I do see that there's a buyer beware component to that. But there's also, when a board adopts a resolution that says we will provide the same level of care at the same cost, unfortunately, that was not available, and it comes at a cost. And we're asking that to be borne upon the offering party. Similarly, like you could say it both ways. One could say, well, don't make an offer unless you know what the complexity is going to be or the cost could be to the offering party than it can be to the accepting party. So that would be my only statement about that is this became an age component, an age issue. where that offer was accepted, and it came with, you know, with a certain increase in cost, and that was something that was not supposed to occur, except, as you'll recall, the only obligation to the employees was the cost share component, which was annual increases or decreases based on the policies.
Anybody else's thoughts?
You and Dale have anything? We kind of waited to hear from you.
I just worry about setting precedents with
And Mr. Majewski, I think, again, not to chime in, I think that's an important component because that came up last week. I can't remember if it was Mr. Strauss, and forgive me if it wasn't, that was a precedent issue that was brought up. But I think Mr. Strauss had stated that, well, we're not going to set precedent because it's very unlikely, if not impossible, that the board would not be doing this again. This was a very, very unique circumstance where the board made this 2-year offering, and it's not likely to occur again. And only less than a handful of individuals either were eligible or took advantage of this. I think the total was, I think it was 3, but correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been 4 countywide. So it's a unique circumstance, but I don't think a precedent-based situation.
Okay, so there is a situation I want you to be aware of, though. There are 2 other employees in the county that would have taken this option if the county was going to pay for the Medicaid Part B. There are 2 employees that would have taken the retirement.
Maybe changing the offer after the fact.
yeah.
I just wanted to
So
point that
we're
out.
dealing with 3 issues here. Let's take each issue individually. So the first issue is paying for the added cost of the health care, which is $100 and some a month, correct?
Correct.
So how does everybody feel on that? Let's take them individually and because I think they need to be individually discussed.
I'm against it.
Oh my. So take a, well,
Each employee was given the opportunity to accept the county's offer by a specified deadline. And as my understanding was, only 3 exercised that circumstance. So I understand what Ms. Byard is saying. It's just the offer that was placed on, at least in my documentation, the offer that was placed out there is that you will have, I think it was 2 weeks to specify if you wish to take advantage of it. And the offer as it stood was you will receive the same level of care, same level of coverage. And the only cost to you would have been that cost share allowance, which would flex. I think it even modified this year because I think her payout or pay, I think, was around $10 per month. And I think it increased to about 28 this year, or maybe 38, but whatever it is, that's not the issue before that she encountered with that. And she knows she has to pay that amount.
Just the way that I view it is that the county is not changing our commitment to what she's getting. She's still going to get the full health insurance that she would get through here. The issue that you raised was additional money that she'd have to spend outside of it through Medicaid, which the county doesn't normally pay for unless I'm misunderstanding.
well, given the circumstance, the county insurance becomes the secondary, correct?
Yes, it does. And I want to point out something. It is a different insurance than what she is currently on, but it's a better insurance. It's not, she's not getting something less than what she's got now, other than the fact that it's a secondary insurance.
I'll make a motion that we do that. The additional.
A second.
I'll second that.
Motion by Dale, seconded by Mark. Anybody have anything else said? Roll call, Lori?
Can I have 1 minute, please? Majeski,
Yes, or no? Wait a second.
You want to vote yes?
No, yes, I
You're supporting your motion, you want to vote yes?
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Copeland,
Yeah.
Strauss,
Yeah, tough one, yes, and I admire a person having that much years of service, but I think we took the board and go.
Pitchford,
Yes. Okay, motion carried. Okay,
Now the next one.
we approved the grant for the Michigan.
Now we got what, sick time
Now we have sick
and,
time.
Because the vacation has already been settled, correct? The actual
Yes.
vacation?
Right. So the sick, so what you're asking for, Judge, on the sick time is to pay the full amount due, and policy is only to pay 50%?
Well, I think there's conflicting policies. I think that's the issue. And so I think the statement that was made last session was that a 50% payout was just approximately over $8,000. You know, there may have been inconsistent policies that said more, some that said less, but the 50% would be just over $8,080, I believe.
which she would get that anyway. Because 50% is policy across the board, with the exception of the sheriff's department, and they don't get to keep theirs. I mean, if they quit, they don't get it. If they retire, they get a percentage, but it's,
Is it 50% or less, or what is it if they retire?
theirs, I believe, is 50.
50, okay.
Yeah, I think that-
And what have we done in the past when somebody has retired? Have we paid 50%?
Yeah, we don't pay
We
a full
haven't
amount.
ever paid a full amount?
Nope.
Okay. I'll make the motion, we pay the 50% of the sick.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Dale, second by Jeff. Anybody else have anything?
I think it's clear that we're voting on a policy and procedure issue. The dollar amount should be irrelevant. I mean, whether it was
Right.
$1,000 or $8,000.
Right.
The dollar amount should be irrelevant. If we owe the money, if they're due that money, we pay it. I think what's come up out of this that I see that's frustrating is the policy and procedure. Somehow we need to get this cleaned up, because we seem to be just, we're constantly, I'm trying to figure out what's our true legal obligation based on the documents, the policies and procedures. And every time we discuss it, it just turns into a kind of a confusing, somehow we need to get this cleared up, because this is going to come up again.
The administrator stating that the policy is 50%. And I'm looking at past history. Have we ever paid more than 50% to anyone? And that's a no. So we would be breaking new ground here if we paid more.
Well, the precedent setting, there has been a past similar situation where there was a full payout, but as Ms. Byard stated, that was not this board, but there was a 100% payout previously to a non-union court employee for 100%.
And that was prior to me.
Yep.
And that was them moving from one department to another.
How long ago was that?
That was over 20-some years ago. So I don't know when that was for sure.
Okay.
But it was prior to me even coming here, so I don't.
Well, again, all I was mentioning is that there's been a lot of this type of discussion come up, and somehow we need to clean it up, either revise or amend our policies and procedures so we have clarity in the future when this comes up. So.
Anything else? You want to do roll call, Lori?
sure. Majeski,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Copeland,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Strauss,
No.
Pitchford.
Yes.
And then what was the third one?
5% increase.
5% increase.
Retroactive back to October 1.
5% of what they would normally.
Because that's what the union got.
Would we have awarded it to non-union, or have we awarded it to non-union?
No.
So why would you think that she would deserve the 5% if we didn't award it to anybody else?
I forgot that. they had a document that stated that all agreement between the court and the
Whatever.
county, the commission, that the non-union court employees would get what the union court employees got as far as raises.
Okay, but why didn't she get it?
That's what I don't know. And that's what comes back to what Mark said.
Because they
that we
came,
need to
the
standardize.
courts came to the board and asked the board to give the non-union employees the same increases that were given to the union people, and the board said no. The money, because the money wasn't there.
But it was after the budget had passed and it wasn't factored into the budget, so it's kind of after the fact, we had to come up with the money.
And this was the issue that I had just brought up, is where, you know, the board says, well, we're going to treat a non-union court employee fringe benefits the same as we did for the others, and then say, well, we're going to approve it for some components of benefits, but not for others. And that seems very inconsistent to say, well, we're going to give the fringe benefit payments as if we're treating you like a union employee, and then say, well, but not this benefit. And that's where the 5%, $1,265 from the October 1st that this employee did not receive, and most likely should have, because now at the time of retirement, you say, well, we're going to treat them like a union employee under the union contract, is what was discussed, that we're utilizing, because otherwise, I guess going back to what Mr. Majewski would say is that if we talk about precedent, there is precedent. There is a 100% payout precedent, whether it's this board 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. That is a precedent set by a county board that said, we will pay a non-union court employee 100%. So once you establish that precedent and then say, well, no, we're going to treat it like 50. Well, we're treating it like 50 because that's what everybody else receives. And then you say, well, but not for this component. You can have the 50% payout on sick time, but you can't have the 5% that everybody else got. That was the point I had attempted to raise last week.
So Judge, how many other employees did not get this 5% payout?
6.
6? So if we would award it to one person, why wouldn't we have to award it to the other ones?
Well, I think that was the argument that we had raised, is that last year when we came before the board, I think at least 2, if not 3 times, was if you're going to treat, you know, the whole and provide and utilize these agreements between the courts and the county, if you're going to utilize it when it benefits the employee and it benefits the county, that was the point we attempted to raise last year. And the board had said, no, we're going to treat them differently. But now the board is saying, well, we're going to treat you like the same because we're going to give you the $8,080 and the sick time payout like the rest of the employees. So we're asking for that consistency and saying the 5% should have been awarded and should be, to be honest. I think it goes back again to what Mr. Fitzpatrick stated, is that there needs to be consistent application. But I don't think it should fault an employee when there's inconsistent application.
Well, if we award it in this situation, that gives the others just cause and reason to say, hey, what about mine?
It may. I can only speak to this particular situation, but that's why I'm asking the board to be consistent. If you say, well, we're going to treat this employee and just authorize, as you did, the 50%, because that's consistent with what we did with the other employees, I'm just asking for the same to be occur with this, to say, we're going to treat this person consistent, give them the 5% they should have received, which is the $1,265.
Well, what would be the difference if, let's say, she left and there was other increases throughout the years past that she didn't get? Would she be entitled?
Well, that's a great point. That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's when I think you kick in precedent-setting motions and approvals. I mean, I could have probably come before the board and said, well, in 1995 or whatever year it was, you set a precedent by stating we will pay a 100% out on sick time. I didn't ask that. The other is I suppose, have come back and said, well, this employee and many others could have had the top of the 3-tier insurance program offerings at no cost like other employees. And for 10 years since the last contract was awarded, this particular employee did not receive that same level of coverage. So I think that's a great point. But I'm not asking this board to go back and do that, but I think this one is certainly within the same fiscal year. So I don't think it's irresponsible. I'm not asking the court or the board to go back to previous fiscal years because I think those are, somewhat the door is closed, so to speak. But you're right. I think that because this fiscal year is still current, it's a benefit that likely and should have been paid, in my opinion.
I mean, the main reason I believe why we turned that 5% down was that we were having budget issues and we couldn't afford to do it. And we're still in that current year.
Yep. I understand that. I'm just asking the board to be consistent because it approved the 50% consistent with other employees. And I think that this maintains a level of consistency with that fringe benefit offered.
My main concern back, what I recall, was that it wasn't the fact that the non-union people, don't get me wrong, I never said they shouldn't get a pay raise. My concern was at the time was that the pay raise request was just after we had balanced the budget, and to have to come up with that money. If we would have been having that discussion a month ahead of time and we could have figured out financially how to make it work, it may have turned out differently, but we were just weeks after passing a balanced budget, and then we're being told we have to give the pay raises. I'm back to more of the policy and procedure and the steps that take place and make sure that it works out. I'll go on record and saying, yeah, I mean, I think it's fair that if union people have been getting pay raises along the way for whatever reason, that non-union also need to be taken care of. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're all diligent in getting all the steps in the right order so that we can plan for this kind of stuff. And unfortunately for me in that situation, again, the request came in just after we had passed a balanced budget, and now we were being asked to come up with more money that we really didn't have. And again, maybe it would have turned out differently had those discussions taken place prior to. And I know there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, but again, we went through a lot of hard work to come up with a balanced budget. And if we can negotiate a way or come up with a way to give some of these people pay raises that maybe they deserve, then we need to do it in a way that fiscally responsible and gives everybody ample time to get all of our facts and figures and our ducks in a row so we can figure out how to pay for it.
Well, I think Mr. Fitzpatrick, that's correct. I think Mr. Haskell started the conversation off with this in that there was that mutual understanding. That's what we brought, that when the union negotiations were ongoing with all of the court employees for the first time in over 10 years, that the 7 employees that really sat there waiting because the union contract could have been ratified before or after the fiscal year, and the non-union employees were awaiting approval. So there really wasn't that period of time that we could present that, because all of a sudden the union contract was ratified and those 7 employees were there, somewhat in limbo. And I think it's difficult for the board to say, we're going to follow some pattern and provide a payout consistent with what we've always done, and then say, well, but not in this instance. That's the part I'm struggling with, to say in one motion, we'll say we're going to treat this employee in their payouts, just like we do all other union employees, and then say, well, but not this component. That's the part I'm struggling with.
Right, but I don't see where we have taken,
We need to open the public hearing for the budget
Okay.
for the year.
I don't see where we have paid potential increases to people years down the road that they might have had in prior years that weren't approved by the board. So why would we do it now?
Well, you're still in the current fiscal year for the amount.
Right, we've never paid for, to my knowledge, the board has never paid for any increases to someone that they could have gotten in
Right.
earlier in the year.
But then
They
using,
weren't-
yeah, but Mr. Majewski, if I use that same reasoning, then why wouldn't I say we've never done that, but in this instance you have, then I suppose I could reverse my motion and say, well, let's follow precedent with what this board has done. And then we'll seek the 100% payout on the sick time, because there is precedent for that. And that's established by the board. So, you know, that's the difficult part. So I suppose I could have come before the board and said, fine, you know, let's do it that way. And let's just, this, where we didn't have precedent on the other buyouts, then I should have said, well, then let's authorize the 100% on the sick time payout, which would be over $16,000. This situation on the 1,200, there's no precedent. So, you know, utilizing what we do in the courts, precedent lasts 50, 60, hundreds of years. So there is precedent where this board has approved 100% payout.
I'd just like to point out that she did get the 1.5% lump sum when the unions did not get that, which was roughly $760. And second, we have extensions in the packet for approval with the Board of Commissioners to extend contracts without increases. And if you give increases at this point, I think it's going to cause an issue. That's just my perspective on it, but and it's totally up to the board how you
Well, I think
proceed.
that may be an issue, but I don't think we should use that in any way to change our decision, whether somebody else is gonna do something. I mean, we're dealing with this situation, and the unions can do what they want, that's fine. They're entitled to whatever they wanna do, but I think that we shouldn't be pressured one way or another based on what they may or may not do. We need to deal with this situation and do what we feel is correct or proper. And I'm going to throw this out there. Is there, they spend more legal money, but is this something we need to have some kind of a legal opinion on from our legal people to make sure that we're handling this properly? I mean, I hate to spend the money on it, but
I don't think so. I don't think it justifies.
I don't have a problem with not doing it either. I'm just throwing it out there.
Does anybody want to make a motion to do it or not?
I guess I would make the motion not to pay it. Just we run in. It's a Pandora's box for us. If we pay it out, we could have 6 other people show up and say, "Okay, where's our 5%?"
Legitimate.
I mean, we could find ourselves in trouble either way. So
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made by Mark, seconded by Dale, not to do the increase. Anybody have anything else?
Is this, I'm sorry to interrupt this, but if I may just ask, is this limited to the situation Judge Farrell had brought to your attention? That you're saying not to grant that request with regard to that employee who is retiring?
Full color?
Fitzpatrick,
yes.
Majewski.
Yes.
Strauss.
Yeah.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pasco,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Yes, motion carried. We were in a different budget state than maybe, but we're still having issues, we need to just not give any raises.
Well, like,
Yeah.
budget or not, I mean, we need to have clear policy and procedure, how we're gonna handle this, and whether we were sitting on $1 billion or $0, I think our decision probably should be consistent either way on how we feel it needs to be handled.
Thank you, Judge Farrell. You ready, Roxanne? Sure. Good morning. Good morning. How should I go about it? Right here, okay? Or can everybody see, or is there an audience, or?
We're fine, I think whatever you're comfortable
Right,
with,
okay.
we can hear you.
Okay, can I do this? Is everybody okay? So you can hear me a little better. Hi, everyone. I'm Roxanne. It was Nicholas. I just got remarried, so it's Foster. So if you hear Foster, it's Amy. I'm here to present the 2019 fiscal year audit for the county. Did everyone get a chance to get a copy and take a look at it? Any questions before I start? So this audit was a little unique. I think this whole year is unique, as we all know, but this audit was submitted quite a bit after it traditionally would, and I think probably the board is aware there were some delays with the road commission audit, and that delayed the county audit. So is everyone okay and have questions regarding that? Okay. We were able to issue it. We had extensions granted and submitting the federal portion on, and there were some extensions across the country for that as well. So everything, I think, in terms of the submission is fine in terms of the timing of it. I can do kind of a traditional going through the numbers and then talk about the audit findings. Does that sound what you're kind of after? Okay. So it was an unmodified report, which is what the best one there is. It's used to be called an unqualified report. It's called an unmodified report now. If we want to look at the management discussion and analysis, that starts on page 1. This is a broad overview of the status of the county, and we can look on page 3. So this would be the governmental activity. So this would be the general fund and all the special revenue funds. This has a nice comparison between fiscal year 18 and 19. You can see at the bottom the total net position did decrease by 6.7%, 183,000 in total there. The next page, page 4, is a similar comparison. This is with the business type activities. So this would be more like your delinquent tax revolving fund and those type of funds. So again, there was a small decrease of the total net position, just down 1.6%. Moving on to page 5, this is a comparison of the revenues and expenses of the governmental funds. So you can see in 2019, there was an increase of revenue of 1.7 million, but there was also an increase of expenses of 1.6 million. That brings the total ending net position to 2,545,000, which again is a small decrease from the prior year. And the same would be true page 6. This would be the revenues and expenses for the business type activities. Again, a small decrease there. On page 7, this is a comparison of the capital assets of the county between years. So you can see in total, there was an increase of about 300,000 there, 350,000. Excuse me, 250,000. On page 8 is a comparison of the long-term debt between the 2 years. So in total, there were about 200,000 of increase of debt, but you can see quite a few things were paid off and then new items purchased. And a lot of these are leases for equipment and vehicles. On page
Page 14 is where we look more at the funds, which is more of a level of detail that you're probably most used to seeing. So this has those, the general fund and the major special revenue funds. This is the breakdown of the assets and liabilities and the total fund balance for the those governmental funds. And on page 16 is the revenue and expenses. So this is where you can see that the general fund did take quite a huge decrease. It went from 1.3 million to 941,000 in the fiscal year. So you can tell the revenues and expenditures, and then the other financing sources, which would be capital assets and loans and transfers. Any questions or comments about that, the general fund or anything in that area? Okay. On page 19 is a similar breakdown of the revenue and expenditures for those business type activities, which again is, the delinquent tax revolving, the tax foreclosure. This does include the transit and then some of the non-major. And in this case, you can see the transfers out that were made from the delinquent tax revolving, the tax foreclosure. There was 600,000 transferred out of the delinquent tax revolving and 450,000 transferred out from the tax foreclosure. Then we go into the footnotes. I mean, there's a lot more detail here. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to go over any of the numbers here. But we then transition it to the footnotes. And this is where you can find more information on the actual details of the loans, the capital assets, the transfers, or any other information. I will bring to your attention on page 37. I know the budget is always something that's on the top of your mind. And in this case, there were some improvements in terms of budgeted amounts, having expenditures over that. One area of concern that I asked the board to continue to be diligent about is those capital outlay purchases, just to make sure that they are adjusted for and accounted for in the budget, in terms of when the leases take place and when the, having the budget match when the actual assets come into use. On page 44, 45, 46, this is the breakdown of the capital assets of the primary government, which would be the county, the public transit, and the road commission. And is there any other questions or concerns that I can discuss about kind of the items I've just discussed? We can pop over to the audit findings. That's generally the areas I'd like you to take a look at. And those can be found on page 123. So the first one deals with capital assets, and I kind of alluded to that in terms of the budgeting and so forth, but this is something that really should be taken a look at going forward in terms of making sure that the new items are on the capital asset listing and that they're properly accounted for and properly classified. I think there's great potential with your computer system. I think that there's just some working out of how that feeds into your general ledger. Page 124, this is an audit finding that the county has had for quite some time, and it is a pretty common one in terms of local units of government. And that's pretty much things that you rely on the auditing function to prepare the financial statements. Item number 3 is on page 125. That's regarding the senior services fund deficit at September 30th, 2019. At that time, it was $6,461. And so there is a deficit elimination plan that I believe is being worked on right now that will be needs to be submitted
the plan to eliminate that deficit. And I understand though we are pretty far into the fiscal year 20 already, so I'm sure that that's been addressed, but there's still that piece of the deficit elimination plan to be. And then on page 126, that's again that listing of expenditures in excess of appropriations that I touched on in the footnotes for the financial statement. And there were no audit findings for federal programs. So that was part of our single audit, and there were no audit findings in your federal programs that were tested as major programs. So that's always a good thing. Any questions or comments about that so far? We can touch on the status of the pension and OPEB, which would be the retiree health care. That has some detail here on page we've changed the order of these a little bit, so sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm giving you the correct. Okay, page 86. This is a nice breakdown that you can tell kind of the trends of the funding amount for the pension and OPEB. So this on page 86 shows the county in the first several columns, the transit in the center, and then the road commission. So here you can tell the total pension liability, which would be right about kind of in the middle of those double lines at the bottom. So you can tell as of December 31st, 2018, which is the plan year for the pension, the total pension liability was 24 million, and your funding, which would be the next group of numbers down, was at 16 million. So there is roughly a 8.1 net pension liability, so the amount that still needs to be funded. So right now you're at 67%. And then on the next pages are similar information, and then it goes into the OPEB or other post-employee benefits. So on page 88, you can see a similar breakdown of the pension, or excuse me, the retiree benefits for healthcare. And in that case, the county runs on a what they call a pay-as-you-go program. So in that case, it is not funded, and you can see that that's a 0%. But to put that in proportion, the total OPEB liability is 659,000. So quite a different liability than the millions in the pension. Any questions or anything else I can discuss in terms of the financial position of the county right now?
You say we're 67% funded with MERS?
Yeah. That's as of December 31st, 2018. So keeping in mind that timing. So when we have the fiscal year 20 audit, that will show the funding level up through December 31st, 2019. So it is kind of up, you're looking back a little bit.
How does that compare to?
I know that the county is in a position not to have a corrective action plan for their pension and OPEB, which I think is probably a good thing. That 70% is kind of what I see as a norm. So there's absolutely room to keep going, but I don't think you're in, hot water at the moment. So I would just continue, recommend continuing to fund as much as possible, knowing that it's a difficult budget time.
I have a question.
Sure.
What I find when I first got this, we got this several months ago anyway. on the original copy. I zeroed in on the area where you talk about non-compliance with state statutes. To me, that throws up a red flag.
Sure.
Can you clarify some of that? Looks like our biggest issue is with expenditures in excess of appropriations.
Yes.
Can you clarify what you're seeing, what's going on, just so everybody's clear?
Sure. So I think what you're talking about would be, page
125.
Or, I'm sorry,
I think on 125, there's some significant deficiencies. Most of that's pretty simple, but then you get into on 125, it says non-compliance with state statutes.
Yeah.
Statute.
Sure. So the item on 125, it would be finding 2019-3, that relates to a fund deficit. So according to Public Act 140 of 1971, no fund should be in a deficit status. And because the senior services fund was a negative $6,461 at the end of the fiscal year, that is technically a non-compliance with the state statute. So to remedy that, a deficit elimination plan is needing to be submitted to the Department of Treasury, and they have folks in that area that review it and make sure that the plan is approved by the council or by the board, and make sure that it's realistic and that, you know, within 5 years or hopefully within 1 year, that it can be eliminated. And in terms of the finding 2019-4, which is on page 126, those would be the expenditures in excess of appropriation. So according to Public Act 2 of 1968, no expenditure should be more than what the council or the board has appropriated. So that's where we get into the items listed on 127. So there's general fund, the building department fund, and the 911 service fund that each had some areas that the expenditures came in over what was budgeted. And there could be lots of reasons for that. Sometimes there are invoices that come in after the year that some folks, you know, you might not know or things. So, you know, in terms of $367, I absolutely understand that that's an immaterial amount, but we are required to report these even if it's $1 over. So in terms of materiality, some of these top ones in the general fund are not huge. The parts that get a little bit more significant are the capital outlay, and that really is, you know, specifically the capital outlay in the sheriff area. I think that was more, there were some vehicles that were leased that it was a difference of the fiscal year and which year they were put in use versus when they were recorded. So that kind of is why they show this. And this way.
Just want to be clear so that we're hopefully avoiding some of this in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my recommendation, especially since we're coming close to the end of the fiscal year, is to be very diligent in looking through the budget to make sure that, you know, if you look at a budget status report and there are expenditures over your budgeted amount, having the board, you know, approve some amendments to make sure that they're not.
Which was the main reason, part of the reason that I had asked the board to meet on the 30th to allow us that time to get all of those adjustments in and done by the end of the day of the 30th. So we cannot turn in budget adjustments for this year after the 30th of this month.
But these, just clarifying as well, there's always going to be things that come up after we pass our budget. But you're saying some of this stuff, I'm trying to clarify between what we figured out we needed capital outlay at the beginning of the budget year versus things that come up during the year. You know, a window gets busted, you have to replace something in the building.
And those generally aren't capital outlay. If it's, you know, a maintenance or, you know, just a typical thing, those would be just within your department line. Okay. The capital outlay would be the major things like you leased 10 vehicles or you purchased a big piece of equipment or something like that. So just being diligent to make sure that they are recorded in the proper way. So sometimes the vehicles might get put into the general sheriff line when they're technically capital assets that need to be in the capital asset line. So those kinds of things.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Well, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for us to audit the financial statements of the county We look forward to continuing on, and it's actually not too far away to start the next fiscal year, so we appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Long time coming. May I be excused, or is there anything else I can?
She's asking if you need anything else.
Oh, no? Okay, all right, thank you. Will we take a quick 10-minute break? That work for everyone?
So we're back to our motions. David, will you take number 6, please?
6.
I just want you to know that they were, I think, was Cindy contacted Lori?
Yes.
Okay, so Cindy and Crystal were both contacted and asked to join us, just so that,
So they're on Zoom.
maybe, I don't know if they are on there, but they were asked to join.
Cindy Loker and Crystal O'Hare.
I don't see them on here yet unless they're just named something different.
Okay.
You said 6?
Yeah.
Motion to adopt resolution 20-18 and special tribute to Cynthia Walker for her years of service to Clare County.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Dale, seconded by David, seconded by Dale. Anybody else have anything? Roll call, Lori?
Hoagland,
Yes.
Majeski.
Yes.
Strauss.
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Fitchburg.
Yes. Motion carried.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Okay. Leonard, will you take number 7?
I'd be happy to. Motion to adopt resolution number 20-18 and special tribute to Crystal O'Hare for her years of service to Clare County.
Second?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Leonard, seconded by Mark. Anybody have anything else? Roll call, Larry?
Strauss.
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Majeski.
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Fitchburg.
Resolution is passed.
Again, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you very much for all of your hard work over the years, and we appreciate you very much, and enjoy your retirement years and whatever you may choose to do with them. Dale, you want to take number 8?
Sure. To approve budget adjustment 2177 in the amount of $115,000, allowing the appropriation for the DHHS to be moved and appropriated to the child care fund.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Mark, by Dale, seconded by Mark. Any other discussion?
Jenny, are you
What is
on?
it?
I am.
Would you like to give them a brief overview of this? I was gonna also bring up the other matter, but I haven't gotten a figure on that yet.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is, the state has changed things this year regarding the childcare services and the childcare fund. And we used to have 2 appropriations, one that would go to the probate family court and one that would go to the state childcare fund. All of that is running through the probate fund now. So they are in need of the additional 115,000, and actually when it's put in, it will almost be gone. So I've been emailing for the past couple of months with Daryl and Judge Claus and Tracy about coming, because they're going to need an additional, which is not too unfamiliar. It seems like at the end of every fiscal year, they have to kind of relook and see what's going on. And Daryl did send an email back, and he didn't come back with a figure, but it almost looks like maybe an additional 40,000 he was going to need on top of that budget adjustment. The budget adjustment's just going to shift it from the state line that's not being used to the county probate family court line, which is what you have on the table in front of you right now. But they're also going to, in order to finish and complete this fiscal year without a deficit, they're going to need additional funding.
So I'll have that information and that adjustment ready for the meeting on the 30th.
Anybody have any other questions?
Majeski.
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Strauss.
Yes.
Fitchburg.
Yes. Motion carried. On to your report, Lori.
Update on the recount. Did I talk to you about the recount yet or no?
Yes.
I have, okay, all right, so you've been updated on that. And the November 3rd ballots have been ordered and we received them yesterday, approximately 20,000 ballots. We're testing today and tomorrow and delivering the ballots by Friday. Went to 2 meetings last night and one clerk has about 600 voters and they've already received over 200 absentee requests. And then in Hayes, they have a lot more voters. They have over 2,000, but they received over 800 already requests. So they're going to be very busy getting these ballots out in the coming weeks. So we expect the absentee ballots to skyrocket even more in the next month and a half.
Is that because people are just worried getting out COVID?
I don't know. I don't know the reason. I'm assuming it's because of COVID. But it's important that if you guys get questions, that the precincts are going to be open. There's a lot of miscommunication about that. A lot of people are calling the townships and my office thinking that the townships aren't going to be open on election day. They are. They will be open on election day. And we're set to go. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Jenny, do you have a report for us?
Sure. Good morning again. I had set on your desk in front of you the statutory cash and fund balance sheet, and I also kind of do a semi-analysis of your budget. Anyways, so when you look at the long landscape sheet, it still has our projected fund balances percent of revenue and expenses is really low. I know we're working on that. There are so many unknowns currently with COVID and grant reimbursement. I know that Tracy has been working on those, but we don't have any idea if we're actually getting any to reimburse for past wages that we have. One thing that is a little nervous is they took away our last revenue sharing payment, which would have been roughly $135,000. And they replaced it with a coronavirus relief fund in the amount of $245,000. However, the $245,000 has to be spent solely on COVID. So Tracy's waiting. Of course, they do that and they give you a deadline, but you have to wait for their form. And then you have to fill out the form and wait to get it approved. So we're hoping the sticky wicket seems to come from if we had already had our employees budgeted, they seem to not want to reimburse for that, even though we were shut down and had people off of work. So I'm really nervous on if we're going to end up having to pay that $245,000 back or not. So that's just a heads up. Tracy is working on that. And hopefully the state will be quick about their answers. Obviously, the end of our fiscal year is September 30th. We do have a 60-day accrual period. That's not going to be very helpful when it comes to budgeting, as Mark was just asking those questions to Roxanne. So there's still a lot of unknowns due to COVID this year. The current cash and fund balances, that shows the exact cash that we have right now in all of the funds. And I know the general fund is the main fund that we pay attention to. However, there are many other funds there. So if you want to take a look, and the general fund, it has the negative current fund balance. I did just, every 15 days, I have to pay tax money over to the county. So when I put money in today, that'll bring it down to roughly a negative 800,000 as tax money comes in on those two sheets. On other notes, we had our first land sale, which was all online this year. It was last Wednesday. Out of our 53 parcels, we sold 46. So we only have 6 left going to the second auction. I did demolish one prior to the auction that we had foreclosed on. It was the 3rd time. The structure looked all right on the outside, but when you went in on the inside, you fell through all of the floors. We have to get a surveys done, and the asbestos survey guy had trouble getting in there. And it looks like I may be taking down, there's only 2 structures left out of the 6. I may be taking those down as well. One is condemned. And the other one looks like it should be condemned, but I'll work with the building department on that to see. And then I have a question, not really part of a report, but something maybe think about, and you could get back on the September 30th meeting, but the airport, I'm thinking it was back in 2016, there was an airport authority kind of started between Hayes Township, the city of Harrison, and us, in which the two local units contributed $5,000 each, and we did $10,000 for each year. This year, you guys have opted to eliminate the $10,000 from the county going to the airport. So my question is, Hayes and the city of Harrison have given us their $5,000 back, I think it was June or July. Should I be returning those funds to them, or will we be, it looks like we took the $10,000 right out of the budget for this year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 'cause I thought we had a balance of like 18,000.
I think it's, well, it's on that sheet right now. For some reason, I want to say, I thought it was 28. It will bring it down to 18, I think. Oh, no, the cash balance right now is, it says 19. What was I looking at? Hold on one second. Let me look on my.
Oh, 19,000.
19,000 cash, yeah.
I mean, did they want to contribute still, or were they following suit with us?
That I'm not sure about. I did have one person ask.
Well, I remember some of the discussion was, you know, if we were to just axe the airport immediately or to kind of let it play out. I think I had thrown it out there just hoping that if, leave the door open, if somebody wanted to come up with the money, some entities to help keep it open, we would at least do it in such a way that it gave people some time to, whether it be an entity or a group of people, whatever, there could be a seamless transition of funding. But if no one comes up with the money, then eventually it's gonna run out.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I thought Hayes Township was talking about getting away from it.
Yeah, they're not funding it next
Yeah,
year.
they're not gonna fund it anymore. And then what about the city of Harrison?
Tracy hadn't said one way or the other, but my thought is return the funds if the county's not going to put in their portion. But with that said, we still have the rent from the hangars and from the airport or airport restaurant that come into that. So that goes into the funding of that. But on another note, we just received the notes from the inspector, because there's a airport inspector that comes in and looks at things. And there are some trees that are not on our property that need to be cut down because they're in flight path, yes. And one of the other things was that an issue is that they did the crack sealing on the airport runway, but it seems that they're worse. They're like craters right now, and they pointed that out. So I had contacted the Aeronautics Commission and asked them, okay, if the Clare County Airport decided that they didn't want to run as an airport anymore, what would happen with that property? Because it was deeded to us knowing that we would use it as an airport.
And maintain it.
Correct. So if you look at the deed records, it states that it would revert back to the state if it was no longer being used for airport property. And I said to them, would the state want it back, or would the county be allowed to keep that? And because there has been we've been approached about using some of it for industrial park. So, and of course that would be totally up to the board and what they decided to do with that property. But I just wanted to
So we would basically abandon it as a airport. And if the state gives us the option to keep it and utilize the property for something else, we could. Did they say when you're gonna get the answer back on that?
No, they said it could take some time. But then they did also, when they did the inspection, it sounded like they wanted us to hurry up and get these fixes done. The one major fix is the trees need to be cut, and because it's flight path issue. But the problem is that those trees are not on our property. So we would have to contact an attorney, the attorney would contact the people on the properties and let them know that they have to get some of those cut down. So we're working on that part, and then the other thing is that they're saying,
That happened down in Clare.
what's that?
That happened down in Clare, the Ellery Tice property, used to be the chief of police in Clare, he owned property, was on the flight path there, and his daughter and son-in-law, they really pretty big rewards for letting them cut those trees. I mean, you just can't go ahead and cut a person's trees down.
And no question, Tracy, how does our decision affect the restaurant? Because that's on airport property.
Yes, that's ours too.
Right.
Well, the restaurant's ours anyway. But
But is that property separate from the actual airport? If it was to be turned back to the state, would that property go too?
I do believe that's part of it.
I have a question. I know that there was people looking into getting the airport moved to the next level of airport so we could get grants. Has there been any word on that?
No, it hasn't happened because we haven't been able to upgrade the pilot's lounge.
Okay.
And that was one of the major factors in moving it from a basic to a general, or from a basic to a general utility in order to get those grants.
Okay.
So I will keep you posted on that and what I hear and.
I just think it's one of those things in the community. It's nice. We can't afford it. We can't afford it, but my thought process is still just without costing us money. If we can just kind of let it play out, you never know if somebody might step up to the plate or a group organize and say, "Hey, we'll help fund this thing, so we want to keep it open." If we just make a rash decision to axe the whole thing, then that's off the table.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want it to cost us any money. I'm not saying that. I'm just, if there's money there and it can keep playing out for a little while, let's see what happens.
Okay.
That's just
So would the direction be to reach out and see if they want their money back, or we're not going to put in our additional 10,000 or the 10,000 that we normally put in then?
Is this money for their next year's payment or for this year's payment?
This year. They've already paid this year's payment. We have not. And it got taken out of the general fund budget.
I got a good question for Jenny. Jenny, can you hear me?
Yep, I sure can.
I'm just curious. You used the term on your conversation of a sticky wicket. What game is that, you know?
I do not know. I do not know, but I know it's where it's kind of sticky.
Yeah. I mean, if we didn't contribute, and we know Hayes is getting out of it, we're not sure what the city's gonna do. I mean, with all right, we probably should ask them if they want that.
Ask them if they want it back.
Yeah, it's their decision.
Yeah.
If we had put in and they had put in and then it's at the end of the fiscal year, I'd say, okay, the money's been spent, but yeah, be in the same boat we are.
I'd say ask them if they want it back, or if
I
they
know
just want to
Hayes
contribute
did,
it.
but I don't know about here at the city.
Okay, I'll send them out an email.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And that is it for my report, unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. On to my report. I just attended my meetings and everything's pretty much quiet. Dale?
Just attending my meetings, there was a question I had for equalization. I'll have to get with them afterwards. There was a question that was brought up at Lincoln Township's meeting, the treasurer had asked. I don't have it with me right now, but I'll get with them on that. Other than that, been attending my meeting. What he told them. That's it.
No, these are the only meetings I attend. I haven't been to any township meetings. Our city declared they're still virtual, so I don't attend those.
Got nothing.
Mark?
Haven't attended too many outside of these, obviously with the COVID thing, going on and conflicts with other things I have going on. As you can expect, the discussion of the windmill thing, moving into Clare County, as soon as you start talking money, people start, I know that the township that I live in, Arthur, they had discussed it with their zoning, and that was probably a year ago, roughly. I couldn't tell you exactly when. They pretty much decided they didn't want any commercial windmills, but there's talk of, money for leases and stuff, and I have had some people approach me about, at least not doing anything to deter the windmill discussion. So for my area, it sounds like my northern townships, it isn't going to be much of an issue because they're not even looking there. But Arthur Township being just about, and then part of Sheridan, but unless Arthur changes something in their zoning, they're saying no commercial. So I think for me would be the northern part of Sheridan. But I'll just, want to let people know that there are some folks that are want to keep that door open for discussion and anything that may promote that, at least looking into it further. So I'm sure as time goes on, we're probably all going to hear a little bit more about it, the good and the bad, for whatever reason. So that's it.
Can we go ahead and close public hearing? Jeff, you want to take the resolution without the budget? On the very first page?
Yep. Motion to adopt resolution 20-21, a resolution approving and adopting the County General Appropriation Act for fiscal year 2020.
I'll second.
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Dale. Any comments, discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Pasco,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yep.
Fitchburg.
Yes. Budget has been adopted. Mark, can you take number 2 for the wages?
Wage compensation resolution 20-20 to adopt resolution 20-20 establishing fiscal year 2021 compensation.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by David. Any discussion?
Just so you know, it does not include any increases for non-union employees. You know that.
Roll call, Lori?
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Pasco,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yeah.
Fitchburg.
Yes. Wages have been adjusted. Okay, we'll go back to David's report.
Okay, I only have a couple things. First of all, I'd like to sadly inform the board that Frost Township lost one of its trustees recently, Harold Becker. He's Jerry. He was Jerry's father. I'd like to ask the board and everyone here to keep Jerry and his family in your thoughts and prayers. They're going through a rough time of it. Second of all, my monthly, we need to have our budget meetings at the beginning of the month like we said we were going to. I'm going to keep saying it until either it happens or I'm out of office. So we made the decision to do it, and I really feel like we should stick with it. I've been going to my meetings, talking to people. Frost was a little concerned last night about a couple things that we had done last couple board meetings, but they were relieved to hear that we were going to be rectifying some of the situations. So that's it.
Thank you. I don't think we really need to do anything on the state of the county budget. We'll finish up every loose end at the next meeting on the 30th. Any public comment?
I don't see any hands raised.
On to unfinished business. Do we have anything, Tracy? Besides the health insurance? We kind of.
Health insurance.
Well, the court's non-union pay raise just, request that they had requested at the last meeting. Unless you're not doing anything with that, we're moving right on. So,
So now we're back to new business.
for the county health insurance.
Oh, county health insurance, sorry.
So, we talked about the health insurance at the last meeting, and, there was no motion, as it relates to the, spreadsheets that were passed out. The board had approved for a 7% cost share for employees, and I had asked at the last board meeting if you would please consider the 5% rather than the 7%. Just a better sell for our union people, and would allow time for us to meet next year and talk these things through earlier prior to the board meetings. So what I'm asking you to do today is to, I passed out the sheet for the attachments for the extensions for the contracts. I'm asking that you change it from a 7% to the 5% cost share, and add the small BCN one in there for the higher deductible.
Does Jeff have to rescind his motion for the 7?
Yes.
And I got zero issue doing that. I'm all for that. So, how do I do it? Make a motion to rescind my previous Blue Cross Blue Shield plan.
And who seconded that?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Jeff, second by Dale. Any other discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Pascal,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Pittsford.
Yes. Motion carried. I'll make a new one, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we take the 5% cost share plan and add on the option to take the higher deductible plan at a lower cost.
Have a second?
I would say as presented, and I would ask that.
As presented, and Lori, you're,
Yeah.
have one of these.
Okay.
I'll
If you
second
could
it.
Add that to the minutes.
Sure.
Just so you have it.
Motion by Jeff, second by David. Any discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Pascal,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Pittsford.
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, now, David, will you take number 19?
19? Okay. Motion to extend the contracts for UAW Unit 1 non-supervisory unit, UAW Unit 2 supervisory unit, POAM Corrections Unit, POAM Command Unit, POAM non-supervisory unit, and POAM 911 Central Dispatch Unit through September 30th, 2021, and amend the health insurance as presented.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by David, second by Jeff. Discussion? Roll call, Lori?
Hoagland,
Yes.
Pascal,
Yes.
Majeski,
Yes.
Strauss,
Yes.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Pittsford.
Yes. Motion carried. With that, nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thank you.